Hey guys, it's Tim, and welcome to a brand new episode of The Countdown. And with the release of Logan, I think that we should go back and look at Logan's first ever film solo outing, the infamous X-Men Origins Wolverine. Now, I'm fairly confident that I'm not breaking any new ground here by saying that the film is probably the worst of the X-Men films released, and is viewed by many to be one of the worst comic book films of all time. But what specifically about it makes it not work? While there are tons of minor annoyances and nitpicks that can be had with the movie, for me I think it boils down to three major problems that the movie has. First and foremost being the misuse of characters. And before we get to the major one that people love citing, let's look at all the other characters who are mishandled throughout the course of the movie. Because X-Men Origins Wolverine probably has the most superfluous characters shoved into it for seemingly no reason. With X-Men The Last Stand, at least they had the justification that Magneto was building an army of mutants to have all the minor cameos that they had. But with X-Men Origins Wolverine, characters are just there for some reason. I mean, first off, you have Blob and Bolt, the former of which is really just there for a comedy side scene that goes nowhere before he's killed off, and the latter of which basically does nothing before he's killed off. Then you have characters like Cyclops and Professor X who really have no reason to be in a Wolverine origin movie and seem to just be there to try to tie it into the other X-Men movies. And then, of course, there's Gambit, who was a big push for this being his first live-action appearance. He was in all the promotional material, and his scenes amount to him having a fight with Logan due to a misunderstanding, helping him get to the place for the final battle, walking off screen for the entirety of the final fight, and then showing up later once Logan lost his memory. And that's the extent of his character. And honestly, it's barely even worth going into what's wrong with Deadpool, since basically everything is wrong with him. So let's go into our main cast. Honestly, while Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber actually do a pretty decent job in my opinion, we have Silver Fox, who is really just there to be a MacGuffin to drive the story forward and then to give us a last-minute twist. And then you have Stryker, who's there to tie it into the other movies, but outside of that, we really don't know that much about him. The only thing worth getting invested in this movie is the relationship between Logan and Sabretooth, but even that's not handled the best, and it's really not enough to save this movie. And speaking of things being mishandled, let's talk about the effects of the movie. Now, despite being bloodless, even in scenes where Logan was clearly stabbing people, the other X-Men movies handled its action and its effects a lot better than this movie did. Origins seemed content with trying to cover up its faults with story and character with over-the-top effects which more often than not just come across as awkward and unnecessary than actually aiding in anything. I mean, the CG claws are distracting, the effects are so over the top that they just fall into being boring and mundane. A lot of the choreography and positioning just feels awkward, and as a whole it just doesn't feel like anything is really happening in the movie just because of how bad the effects work is. And my third and final reason for why the movie doesn't work is that the story just isn't executed well. The movie is basically split up into three sections. You have the opening scene where Logan gets his powers, then you have the formation and final mission of Team X, and then you have Logan going to track down Silver Fox, who had been kidnapped by Sabretooth. But while elements carry over between these three segments, they don't really feel like they're connected in any meaningful way. Partially because all of them are separated by having time skips between them where we don't see what happens and then just a new situation is presented to us. And then, like I said in the character section, we have a ton of disparate elements that are just shoved into the story for seemingly no reason. Bolt really has no impact on anything before he dies, Blob has no impact on anything before he dies, we have them trying to shoehorn in Cyclops and the foundation of the X-Men into this movie, and it just ends up becoming a big mess of a story. The narrative is cluttered and unfocused, and it really prevents you from being able to get invested in the stuff that actually is trying to move the story forward. I mean, the whole crux of the narrative of the movie is the relationship between Wolverine and Sabretooth as brothers. How they find out at the beginning of the movie that they are brothers, then over the course of their lives they grow apart due to differences in their personality, then it leads to them being on opposite sides and opposing each other, and that may have worked in a movie on its own, but because they also have to shoehorn in how he got the adamantium and have Stryker be a part of it like he was in X2, it just takes too much attention away from that, and it feels hollow as a result. Honestly, the Weapon X stuff feels like an afterthought in the movie. I mean, the reason why Wolverine lost his memory is because he got shot in the head at the very end. And the final fight is between Wolverine, Sabretooth, and Deadpool, who hadn't shown up in the movie for the entirety of the second half at that point. The movie tried to do too much at once, and it really didn't focus on what it needed to for the story. Because there could have been a way to meld together Weapon X and the relationship between Wolverine and Sabretooth. They just didn't manage to do it here. And the end result ended up being a cluttered mess that didn't really work for anyone and ended up putting the kibosh on any plans they could have had for potential future X-Men Origins films focusing on other characters. And those are my 3 problems with X-Men Origins Wolverine. But what do you guys think? What parts of the movie didn't work for you, or what parts of it did? Well, as always, let us know down in the comments, and until next time, this has been Tim from the Hybrid Network, signing out.